Oh, wow. Thank you so much for being here. I am honored and grateful to be a part of this historic event at a historic moment in history. We live in a world with a toxic food culture in which eating foods that are heavily processed, that are depleting the planet, that are depleting our bodies, that are robbing us of the vitality and the joy that we deserve is normalized. And in which agriculture has become the most environmentally destructive force on the planet. And within this context, we have immense power and immense opportunity. I'm just going to adjust the camera so I'm a little bit bigger here. Okay, there we go. We have immense power and immense opportunity to claim our voice, to make conscious choices that turn the tide. And I am here to say that the real truth about health, I think, is that our food choices are a key that can open the door, that can unlock enormous potential for a completely different experience of life than we think is normal in the modern world. And that is really good news. There are so many problems in the world that feel overwhelming, sometimes even unconfrontable. But when it comes to what you eat, you have power, you have choice, and you have the opportunity right now, 3 times every single day, to vote with your knife and fork for the health you want and for the world you want. And I think that is such a liberating, such an empowering, and such a beautiful reality. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. I know you're hearing about it throughout this conference, but we're also going to share some stories and some of my experiences from being on kind of the front lines of the food movement for really my entire life. In fact, my story goes back even before I was born. My grandpa founded an ice cream company. It was called Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors. And my dad, John, grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. He was groomed to one day join in running the family company. But when he was in his early 20s, he was offered that chance. And he said no. And he walked away from a path that was practically paved with gold and with ice cream to, as we jokingly say in our family, follow his own rocky road. And he ended up moving with my mom to a little island off the coast of Canada, where they built this one-room log cabin. They grew most of their own food. They practiced yoga and meditation for several hours a day, and they named their kid Ocean. And they almost named me Kale, by the way. And this was way before kale was cool. But we did eat a lot of kale and cabbage and carrots and other veggies from the garden. And as I got a little older, we moved to California. And my dad began working on a book called Diet for a New America, which came out in 1987. It inspired millions of people to look at their food choices as a chance to make a difference on the planet. And one of his readers ended up being my grandpa, Irvin Robbins. Now, my grandpa had lost his brother-in-law and business partner, Bert Baskin, to heart disease when my Bert was just 54 years old. And so, I never knew my dad's uncle, Bert. I just know about him from family stories. And I know he was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in American history. He also had a family he loved. And yet he ended up with his life cut short way too soon, leaving his wife a widow and his kids fatherless because he didn't have his health. So now my grandpa was on a similar trajectory. At the age of 69, he had serious diabetes, heart issues, weight issues. His doctors told him he didn't have long to live unless he made some big changes. But then they give him a copy of my dad's book, and he reads it. And my grandpa, who was one stubborn cookie, who probably had more investment in thinking there's no connection between diet and health than just about anybody ever could, he made changes. He ended up slashing his animal product consumption, giving up sugar, eating way more fruits and vegetables and whole plant foods, and getting massive results. He ended up reversing his diabetes, reversing his heart disease, losing a bunch of weight, getting off a ton of medications he had been told he would have to take for the rest of his life, living 19 more healthy years. So we've really seen in our family super personally that when we follow the standard American diet, we get the standard American diseases, like happened to my dad's uncle, like happened to my grandpa. But we've also seen what can happen when we make a change, that we can reverse these illnesses and we can turn these things around. And as my dad's work spread, the media had a lot of fun with this story. They called him the rebel without a cone. They called him the prophet of nonprofit. And we had at one point, he put a little thing in the back of Diet for New America, a little page that said, hey, if you're interested, inspired by this work, contact us. And we got a P.O. box, and people started sending letters. And then we had to change it to a P.O. drawer. And then in Felton, California, where this post office box / drawer was located, we ended up having to come in every day to get boxes of letters because there were so many people writing in response to the book. And I think we received over 20,000 handwritten or hand-typed letters. This was back before computers were hardly available at all, from individual real people, no emails. There was no website, saying, thank you for changing my life. And the stories were pouring in from people who had read this book and felt that it had saved their lives every single day. And so a movement was kind of born out of that. An organization was founded called Earth Save out of that, which my mom and dad started in our living room. And I was at the age of 14. I was stuffing envelopes and helping out, to try to get this thing going, organizing volunteer parties. The movement continued to grow and expand. In the 5 years after Diet for a New America came out, consumption of beef in the United States dropped by 20%. And when my dad was on national television in a debate with a leader from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the guy on the other side says, the host cited that statistic, and the guy said, it's his fault. So I don't know if it was my dad's fault or what, but I do know that we got to be a part of an exciting moment in history. A movement, however, that was just beginning then, that has actually been going for quite some time, but we got to be a part of that wave. And now there are new waves and new waves and new waves as the movement to rethink how we eat, how we treat animals, how we treat the earth is exploding. As more and more people are saying enough is enough of feeling like crap, as enough is enough of seeing ourselves as exploiters, seeing the human animal as one that oppresses and tortures other animals, as seeing the human animal as one that consumes to its own demise. We see ourselves almost sometimes like a cancer on this earth as we're on resource consumption overshoot. Every day we have less forests and less topsoil and more carbon in the atmosphere and more pollution and less drinking water available, more guns and bombs. But here's the thing. We also have more knowledge. We also have more awareness of what's happening. And we have more studies coming out telling us the truth about how our food choices affect our health and our world. Every day we're learning more about what's possible. So while we are, it seems sometimes almost on a one-way road to oblivion, obesity rates going up, cancer rates going up, sickness going up, health and happiness going down, at the same time, we can turn that around. We can be a part of the solution on planet Earth. We can be a part of the solution in our own lives. We can take charge of our health. And that really is what the food revolution movement is all about. So coming back to the family story, when I was 16, I was inspired both by my grandpa's journey of transformation and also his legacy of accomplishing big things. I was inspired by my dad's path of integrity. And I was also inspired by the power we could have as humans to make it different. So I founded a nonprofit called Yes, working with young leaders on leadership development around the world. And I worked with leaders in over 65 countries for 20 years, traveled all over the globe. And I learned so much about how the world works and how people see the world from very different perspectives all over the planet. And also, what is the common heartbeat of humanity that we all have in common with all of our differences of religion and class and nationality and politics and ideology and culture. There are certain things that we all seem to have in common. Like everybody I've ever met wants to live, wants to love, wants to have their families and their loved ones be safe, wants clean air and clean water and a clean environment around them. Everyone I've ever met wants health. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to be miserable. Nobody wants to be a destroyer in a way that doesn't somehow add. Everybody wants to somehow contribute to the world around them, however they define that. Some people's circle of compassion is very small. They're just thinking about number one or their family or their company, but everybody has something they care about and something they're willing to do something for. And my experience is that the vast majority of humans, when given a choice between being a part of cruelty and violence or being a part of healing and hope, will choose healing and hope.